The Oval Office hummed with the low drone of the air conditioning, a sterile chill cutting through the late afternoon light filtering through bulletproof windows. President Donald Trump sat behind the resolute desk, his fingers drumming a staccato rhythm on a stack of briefing papers. Across from him, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan leaned forward, his tie slightly askew, eyes fixed on a tablet screen glowing with red-flagged alerts. "Markets are down 8% in the last hour," Sullivan said, voice clipped. He swiped the screen, pulling up a graph spiking like a fever chart. Not a crash, a plunge, and it's all tied to that leak from Beijing. Trump's jaw tightened. He glanced at the door, where Secret Service agents stood like shadows. "She doesn't play games like this without reason. What's the hook?" Sullivan hesitated, the room's silence thickening. He tapped the tablet again. A classified memo flickered into view. Intercepted chatter from Chinese state media. Whispers of a microchip embargo. Not just any chips, the advanced semiconductors powering everything from fighter jets to Wall Street servers. The US imported 92% of its high-end chips from Taiwan, but whispers pointed to Xi's grip tightening through back-channel deals. "It's not an embargo," Sullivan continued. "It's a shadow war. Our intel shows Xi's team rerouted 1.2 million units last night, straight from TSMC fabs to Shanghai stockpiles. That's enough to cripple Intel's supply chain for 6 months. And the markets, they sniffed it out. Dow dropped 1,200 points in minutes." Trump exhaled sharply, the sound echoing off the wood-paneled walls. He rose, pacing to the window overlooking the rose garden where leaves rustled in a faint breeze. Outside, the world spun on, oblivious. But inside, the air felt heavier, laced with the faint scent of polished leather and fresh coffee gone cold. "Call in the Commerce Secretary," Trump ordered, turning back. His voice carried the edge of a man who'd stared down trade wars before. "And get me Yellen on the line. If Xi thinks he can choke us on chips, we'll hit him where it hurts. Rare earths. China controls 80% of that market. Flip it, and their EV push grinds to a halt." Sullivan nodded, already typing into his secure phone. But as he did, a knock echoed sharp, insistent. The door opened, and in strode Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, her face pale under the harsh overhead lights. She clutched a slim folder, its edges worn from hurried hands. "Mr. President," Yellen said, closing the door with a soft click. "It's worse than we thought. The leak wasn't random. Our analysts traced it to a joint venture in Shenzhen. US firms embedded there, feeding data back to Xi's inner circle. Losses are mounting. 450 billion in market cap evaporated since noon. And that's just the opening salvo." Trump's eyes narrowed, locking onto Yellen's. The room seemed to shrink, the weight of unseen eyes, cameras, bugs, the ghosts of past deals pressing in. He gestured to the chairs, the leather creaking as they sat. "Show me the numbers, all of them." Yellen opened the folder, pages rustling like dry leaves. Charts spilled out, pie graphs showing US dependency, 65% of automotive chips, 78% for consumer tech, all vulnerable. "Xi's play is surgical," she explained. "He's not declaring war, he's starving us. If this holds, unemployment spikes 2% in tech hubs by quarter's end. California alone loses 150,000 jobs." Sullivan interjected, his pen clicking once, twice, a nervous tick breaking the tension. "And it's not just economic. Defense implications. F-35 production halts without those chips. We're talking 200 undelivered jets. $16 billion in delays." Trump leaned back, steepling his fingers. The clock on the mantel ticked forward, each second amplifying the standoff. "Xi wants a deal, he always does, but this is personal." His voice dropped, laced with the gravel of old battles. "You say it's a shadow war. I say we light it up." Yellen shifted, her chair scraping faintly against the carpet. "We can't rush. The G20 summit is in 2 weeks. Xi's delegation arrives with demands. Lift the Huawei bans or they double down. But there's more. Our embassy in Beijing reports unusual activity, high-level meetings in the Zhongnanhai compound. They're preparing something bigger." The president stood again, crossing to a side table where a decanter of water sat untouched. He poured a glass, the liquid glugging softly, then set it down without drinking. "Bigger how? Spells it out." Sullivan exchanged a glance with Yellen. The air between them charged. Microchips are the tip, Sullivan said. Intel points to a coordinated hit, cyber intrusions into our grid timed with the chip squeeze. If they pull it off, blackouts in the Northeast. Millions affected. And the markets? They'd free fall another 15%. Trump's fist clenched, knuckles whitening against the desk. The room fell silent, save for the distant hum of DC traffic filtering through sealed panes. He straightened, eyes burning with resolve. Get the NSC in here, full briefing, and tell Pompeo to dust off the tariff playbook. If she wants war, we'll make it one he can't win. Yellen gathered her papers, the folder snapping shut like a verdict. But as she rose, her phone buzzed, a secure line, vibrating against the table. She glanced at the screen, her expression freezing. It's from the Fed, emergency call. Sir, the yuan's surging 4% against the dollar. They're countering our every move. Trump's gaze hardened, the weight of the invisible battlefield settling like fog. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lawn. Inside, and the real storm brewed more. Suldina cleared his throat, breaking the pause. We need a counter strategy now. Ally with Taiwan? Pressure South Korea for reroutes? Both, Trump replied, his tone unyielding. And more. Call in the Joint Chiefs. This isn't trade anymore. It's survival. The meeting stretched into the evening, voices rising and falling in heated exchanges. Yellen laid out projections. Without intervention, GDP shrinks 1.2% by year's end, wiping out 2.5 million jobs nationwide. Sullivan countered with timelines, chip shortages hitting servers in 72 hours, crippling cloud giants like Amazon and Microsoft. Trump listened, interjecting with sharp questions. What's Xi's endgame? Dominance in AI? Control of the next trillion-dollar industry? His words hung unanswered as aides filtered in with fresh printouts. Emails from Silicon Valley execs, panicked memos from the Pentagon. Hours blurred. The room's air grew stale, mingled with the sharp tang of whiteboard markers as Sullivan sketched alliance maps on a digital screen. Percentages flew. China's 60% lock on refining capacity for chip materials, U.S. countermeasures eyeing Australia's mineral reserves. Yellen pushed back, her voice steady. Escalation risks global recession, Europe's already jittery, DAX down 5% in sympathy. If we hit back, supply chains fracture. Think 2008, but faster. Trump waved it off, pacing tighter circles. A pen rolled off the desk, clattering to the floor, unnoticed amid the rising stakes. You worry about recessions, I worry about surrender. She's testing us. That microchip war, it's his declaration. As night fell, the group huddled over a secure video link to Beijing analysts. Whispers of Xi's midnight council emerged, demands for tech transfer, threats of full embargo on 300,000 tons of lithium exports. The numbers piled up, each one a brick in the wall closing around America's tech empire. Sullivan's tablet pinged again. Urgent. Mr. President, breaking, Reuters has the story. Hidden chip war ignites market meltdown. Xi's office denies, but the damage is done. Trump stopped pacing, his silhouette stark against the window. The city lights twinkled below, a facade of normalcy. But here, in the heart of power, the first cracks showed. Yellen's phone buzzed once more, insistent. She answered, listening in silence, her face drained of color. It's confirmed. Xi just placed a call to the Politburo. They're mobilizing state funds, $500 billion, to buy up distressed U.S. assets in the chaos. The room went still, the implication landing like a bomb. Trump turned, his voice a low growl. Then we fight fire with fire. But before the plan could solidify, a knock shattered the tension. An aide burst in, breathless, holding a sealed envelope stamped with the CIA seal. Sir, intercepted directive from Zhongnanhai. It's not just chips, she's targeting the ports. Blockade simulations off Long Beach. If they execute, trade halts for weeks. Trump snatched the envelope, tearing it open. The words blurred under lamplight, but the threat was clear. 40% of U.S. imports, $2 trillion annually, at risk. The microchip war had just gone nuclear, and as the advisors scrambled to respond, one chilling detail emerged from the shadows. A traitor in the room, feeding every move straight to Beijing. The Situation Room beneath the White House buzzed with the flicker of multiple screens, casting blue hues across the faces of the gathered advisors. President Donald Trump stood at the head of the polished oak table, his sleeves rolled up, staring at a live feed from the New York Stock Exchange. The ticker scrolled relentlessly. Dow minus 1,800 points now, a bloodbath that had erased $800 billion in value since dawn. The air carried the faint ozone scent of overheating projectors and the bitter edge of cold coffee. Jake Sullivan paced near the wall of monitors, his voice low but urgent as he briefed the room out. Snyder's story hit like a grenade. Xi's denial is smoke. Our intercepts confirm the Politburo's green light on those port simulations. Long Beach could see delays of 40% on inbound cargo. That's $500 million a day in stalled goods, from iPhones to auto parts. Trump's eyes flicked to the envelope from the previous night's chaos, now splayed open on the table. The CIA's redacted pages detailed the blockade threat. Chinese naval assets repositioning off the California coast, drills masking a potential stranglehold on 25% of U.S. Pacific imports. He slammed a fist lightly on the wood, the thud echoing. And the traitor? Who in this building is selling us out? Janet Yellen, seated with her laptop angled toward the group, exhaled slowly, her fingers hovering over keys. We're tracing digital footprints, Mr. President. The leak pattern matches an insider. Access to classified trade models, but right now the chip reroute is biting harder. TSMC reports 500,000 units diverted overnight. Nvidia's stock is down 12%. They're warning of AI server shortages in 48 hours. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo entered then, her heels clicking sharply against the tiled floor. She carried a thick binder, its spine creased from frantic annotations. The door sealed behind her with a pneumatic hiss, sealing in the tension like a vault. The breakdown from Silicon Valley. U.S. firms hold 35% of global chip design, but fabrication, China's shadow factories are churning out knockoffs at 60% capacity. If Xi locks down rare earths, 85% of our supply, we lose gallium exports. That's the blood of semiconductors. Trump nodded, gesturing her to the table. The room's fluorescent lights hummed overhead, amplifying the strain in every furrowed brow. Numbers! Gina! Hit me! With the real pain! She flipped open the binder, pages whispering as she pointed to pie charts in stark red and blue. Automotive sector first. 70% of chips in new EVs come from Asia. Shortage means 200,000 fewer cars. Offlines by December. $15 billion in lost revenue. Defense? F-35s need 3,000 chips per jet. Delay one squadron and we're $4 billion short on readiness. And the markets? Volatility index spiked to 45. Hey, panic selling across the board. Sullivan interjected, leaning over a console to pull up a satellite map. Red icons pulsed along shipping lanes. She's not bluffing. PLA Navy's running exercises 200 miles off Taiwan, coordinated with the chip grab. If they test a blockade, oil prices jump 20% overnight. Gas at $5 a gallon nationwide. The president rubbed his chin, the scrape of stubble audible in the brief silence. A clock on the wall ticked forward, each second a reminder of the unraveling. Get Taiwan on the line. President Lai needs to know we're backing their fabs. And tariffs. Ramp them to 50% on Chinese EVs. They exported 1.2 million last year. Let's see how that dries up. Yellen shifted, her chair creaking under the movement. That escalates fast. Europe's already hit. Stocks 600 down 6%. If we push, she counters with soybean bans again. We lost 12 billion in ag exports last cycle. Raimondo countered swiftly, her voice edged with steel. It's not just loss. It's leverage. Our rare earth stockpiles cover 3 months. Australia can ramp to 40,000 tons annually. Hit Xi's battery giants. Their lithium-ion output drops 25% without it. Trump's gaze hardened, sweeping the room. The air felt thicker now, laced with the subtle whir of ventilation struggling against the heat of bodies and urgency. An aide in the corner adjusted a microphone, the faint static crackling like distant thunder. You say blockade, I say we fortify. Call in the Joint Chiefs. Full mobilization plan. As if summoned by the words, General Mark Milley entered through a side door, his uniform crisp, boots polished to a gleam. He saluted crisply, then laid a tablet on the table. "Mr. President, cyber's lighting up. Chinese hackers probed our grid twice this morning, probes into northeast substations. If chips are the weapon, power's the kill shot. Blackout one city and markets crater another 10%. The group leaned in, the screen illuminating Milley's stern features. Projections scrolled. 15 million households dark, $100 billion in daily economic bleed. Trump absorbed it, his pen tapping a steady rhythm against the binder. She thinks he can carve us up piece by piece, chips today, ports tomorrow. What's the counterpunch? Milley tapped the tablet, zooming to a heat map of supply chains. Diversify now. South Korea's Samsung can surge 300,000 units weekly if we greenlight subsidies. $2 billion from the CHIPS Act. But Intel's screaming about that insider. Footprints lead to a State Department server time-stamped from last night's meeting. Yellen's phone vibrated on the table, the buzz cutting through like a warning. She glanced at it, her expression tightening. Fed chair. Bond yields are spiking. 10-year treasuries at 4.8%. Investors smell blood. Trump waved it off, but the room's energy shifted, a collective inhale as the implications sank in. Sullivan crossed to a secure line, dialing with precise movements. Connecting to Taipei now. President Li's team reports unusual drone activity over their chip plants, likely Beijing's eyes. The video feed crackled to life, President William Li's face appearing on the main screen, his office in Taipei bathed in the soft glow of dawn light. "Mr. President Trump," Li said, his English measured. "The diversions are confirmed. We've lost 20% of our output to reroutes. Xi's pressure is mounting. Threats to our energy grid if we don't comply." Trump leaned into the camera, his voice booming through Xi. "Speakers, you hold the line, Bill. We're sending aid. $5 billion in emergency fab funding. No surrender on those wafers." Li nodded, but a flicker of doubt crossed his features. "Appreciated, but our intel mirrors yours. A leak in DC circles. Someone's tipping the Politburo on your moves." The connection held for a beat, then static interrupted, the screen freezing on Li's concerned gaze. Sullivan cursed under his breath, rebooting the link. "Interference! They're jamming signals already." Raimondo slammed her binder shut, the sound sharp in the charged air. "This insider's real. If it's state, we're compromised at the core. Every tariff we draft leaks in hours." Trump straightened, his shadow long across the table under the harsh lights. The room fell quiet, save for the soft beep of incoming alerts. "Find them, now, and prepare the announcement. Executive order on chip independence. $50 billion allocation, effective immediately." Yellen rose, gathering her notes with deliberate care. "Sir, the G20's in 10 days. Xi's arriving with his delegation. If we expose the traitor publicly, wanenose stiram podotsend, wansur stotiorin on eideridre, dor donio or down arvor, hence." The door hissed open again, cutting her off. An FBI agent, badge glinting, strode in with a slim dossier. He handed it to Milley without a word, the paper crisp and unmarked. Milley scanned it, his jaw setting. "We have a lead." Email trail from a mid-level analyst sent chip manifest to a Beijing proxy server at 2:17 a.m. Names embedded in the code: Elena Vasquez, commerce attaché. The revelation landed heavy, the room's temperature seeming to drop. Trump's eyes narrowed to slits. "Bring her in, quietly." As agents moved to comply, Sullivan's tablet lit up with a priority flash, breaking from Bloomberg. Chip stocks rebounding slightly, up 3% on rumors of U.S. subsidies. But she's just tweeted. Denies all, calls it American paranoia. Yellen checked her own device, paling. Worse, UN's up another 2%. They're buying our dip, scooping $100 billion in U.S. equities through shells. Trump turned to the window where reinforced glass overlooked a darkened lawn. The night pressed in, stars obscured by city glow. Milley stepped closer, voice low. "Sir, if Vasquez flips," she names names, "higher up, this war's got roots in our own house." The president exhaled, the sound ragged in the stillness. A pen clicked idly in Raimondo's hand, forgotten. The balance teetered, chips secured for a breath, but betrayal's shadow loomed larger. Sullivan broke the hush. Interrogation teams en route, but Mr. President, one more thing from the dossier. Vasquez wasn't alone. The email chain points to a Politburo contact, Xi's trade czar, Wang Wentao. He's the architect. Trump's fist clenched again, veins standing out. The screens flickered with fresh data, global market stabilizing at minus 2,000 points, a fragile pause. But inside, the fracture widened. Yellen's voice cut through, steady despite the strain. We audit her access logs. Every file touched. Projections show if she fed them our rare earth countermeasures, she's already pivoting to graphite bands. That's 90% of battery anodes gone. The agent nodded, exiting as swiftly as he'd come. The room exhaled collectively, but the air remained thick, laced with suspicion. Trump paced once, twice, his footsteps measured. This changes everything. No more shadows. We go public with the subsidies at dawn. Force Xi's hand. Millie interjected, tablet in hand. Risky. Defense briefings estimate retaliation. 30% cut in our embassy staff visas. And cyber? They're probing DARPA servers now. Blueprints for next-gen chips. Raimondo leaned forward, her voice urgent. Then we strike first, invoke the Defense Production Act. Mandate 100% domestic sourcing for military tech. That's 50,000 jobs created overnight, but it guts Chinese contracts worth $20 billion. The debate ignited, voices overlapping in the confined space. Yellen pushed for diplomacy. G20 could broker a truce, save $1 trillion in mutual losses, while Sullivan mapped alliances. Japan commits 200,000 tons of silicon wafers if we lead. Trump listened, interspersing commands. All of it, but the traitor first. If Vasquez talks, we get Xi's playbook. The clock struck midnight, its chime muffled but insistent. As the team dispersed to execute, a final alert pinged. Vasquez's office rated empty. A note left behind. The war's bigger than chips. Watch the skies. Trump stared at the message, the words blurring under fatigue. Outside, a helicopter thrummed overhead, slicing the night. The microchip skirmish had drawn first blood, but the real battle, for trust, for empire, was just beginning. The fluorescent lights of the FBI's secure interrogation room buzzed like a swarm, casting stark shadows across the concrete walls. Elena Vasquez sat rigid in the metal chair, her wrists cuffed to the table, eyes darting between the one-way mirror and the folder of printed emails splayed before her. Special Agent awesome, sir. Yes, your question CES. Pajan paced slowly, his shoes scuffing the linoleum, while Jake Sullivan observed from the corner, arms crossed, the air thick with the metallic tang of tension and stale vending machine coffee. You sent those manifests at 21:17 a.m., Reyes said, tapping a highlighted line on the top sheet. His voice was even, but the pause hung heavy. Chip routes from TSMC to Shanghai, 1.2 million units, exact coordinates. That's not a mistake. That's treason. Vasquez's fingers twitched against the cuffs, the chain rattling faintly. She glanced at the mirror, as if sensing eyes beyond. I was following orders, not yours. The deal was bigger than chips, rare earths, ports, the whole chain. Xi's team offered immunity. For everyone involved. Sullivan stepped forward, his shadow falling across the table. The room's single vent hummed, circulating cool air that did nothing to ease the sweat beading on her brow. Immunity from what? Walk us through the documents. Every sum, every contact. She exhaled sharply, the sound slicing the quiet. Reyes slid a tablet toward her, unlocked to a redacted chain, emails time-stamped from Zhongnanhai, routed through proxies in Shenzhen. It started 6 months ago, Vasquez began, her voice steadying. Wang Wentao's envoy approached me at a trade summit in Geneva. They had leverage, hacked files from commerce showing U.S. subsidies to Intel. $8.2 billion funneled through shell grants. In return for the manifests, they promised to cap rare earth exports at 70% of our needs. No full cutoff. Reyes leaned in, his pen clicking once, a sharp punctuation. And the ports that blockade sim off Long Beach. Your note said, watch the skies. Drones? Vasquez nodded, eyes flicking to the tablet's map overlay. Red lines tracing PLA movements, 15 vessels positioned 150 miles offshore. Drills covering a potential choke point for 40% of West Coast imports. Not just drones, satellites. They're mapping our reroute plans. Samsung's surge in South Korea, 300,000 units weekly. If we shift, they hit the lanes. 2.5 churi si inon si lights. Ting si on and si tan si be where I'll highs. Si tranks trade at risk. Wang's numbers were clear. Delay our EVs by 25% and their BYD dominates with 1.8 million units exported tariff-free. Door clicked open, admitting Janet Yellen, her face drawn under the harsh light. She carried a fresh printout, edges crisp from the secure printer down the hall. The scent of fresh ink mingled with the room's confinement. Vasquez, this goes higher. Your chain links to a Politburo memo. Xi's directive for a calibrated squeeze. They've already moved antitrust probe on Qualcomm, blocking their $3.5 billion Autotalks deal. That's Israeli chip tech, dual use for military drones. Sullivan's jaw tightened. He pulled up a secure feed on his phone, the screen glowing with live market data. NASDAQ rebounding 4% on subsidy rumors, but volatility at 42, a hair trigger from chaos. Society's reacting. Protests in Silicon Valley. 5,000 tech workers marching. Signs screaming, chip independence now. Unions warning of 180,000 job losses if the squeeze holds. And the elite, Boeing's CEO just called, China's hiking port fees on U.S. vessels, 15% effective dawn. That's $400 million in added costs for 2026 deliveries. Vasquez shifted, the chair groaning under her. You think I'm the leak? Wang has assets everywhere. He showed me intercepts, your G20 prep docs, tariff models at 50% on their EVs. If Xi walks in with that, he owns the room. Losses mount, US GDP dips 0.8% projected versus their 0.3%. They're winning the math. Reyes slammed the folder shut, the thud echoing off the walls. A pause stretched, broken only by the distant murmur of agents in the hall. Names! Give us Wang's US contacts or the deal unravels for you, 25 years minimum. She met his gaze, unflinching. The air grew heavier, laced with the faint ozone of the room's electronics. One name? Ambassador Liu. He's the cutout. Met him in D.C. last week. Zhongnanhai Compound Link. They control 85% of gallium refining. Without it, our chip fab's idle. 60,000 tons diverted already. Yellen interjected, her voice cutting clean. That's revelation enough. But the fallout, Europe's elite are circling. Merkel's successor just phoned. EU probing Chinese subsidies, $150 billion in state aid to SMIC fabs. If they join our tariffs, global chains fracture. 10% drop in world trade volume. Sullivan nodded, pocketing his phone as an alert vibrated. CNN breaking. U.S. insider leak rocks trade war. The story spun Vasquez's raid into speculation. Markets twitching down 2% in sympathy. Secondary players emerging. Taiwan's lie is mobilizing. Parliament vote on $10 billion fab expansion, but Beijing's counter. Export bans on 5 rare earths effective November 8th. That's magnets for our wind turbines. 30% of green energy stalled. The interrogation pressed on, Vasquez yielding fragments. A $500 million slush fund traced to Wang's accounts, funneled through Hong Kong shells for U.S. lobbyists. Reyes noted each, the pen scratching like claws on bone. Victims? Spell it out. How many hit? Millions, she replied, voice dropping. Automakers first, Ford and GM idling plants, 50,000 workers furloughed. Then defense, 120 F-35s grounded without chips, $12 billion in overruns, and the hidden cyber probes into our grids timed with the squeeze, blackout one hub, and unemployment jumps 1.5% nationwide. Yellen paced now, her heels echoing softly. The room's clock ticked toward noon, sunlight slanting through a high-slit window, illuminating dust motes in the beam. New interests at play. India's Modi just offered alliance, $4 billion in semiconductor joint ventures. But Xi's response? Antitrust on Apple suppliers, threatening 20% of iPhone assembly. Sullivan's phone buzzed again, President Trump's direct line. He stepped to the mirror, answering in murmurs. Trump's voice crackled through. Get everything. If Wang's the architect, we expose him at G20. No more shadows. Back at the table, Reyes leaned close to Vasquez. One more. The skies. Drones over Taiwan fabs. Your tip? She hesitated, the cuffs clinking as she leaned forward. A bead of sweat traced her temple. Wang's order. Recon for strikes if Lai resists. 200 drones deployed, mapping 40% of output. But there's a bigger play. She's mobilizing. State funds, $300 billion to snap up distressed U.S. tech stocks in the dip. The revelation hung, the room stilling. Yellen's printout fluttered slightly in the vent's breeze. That's the scheme. Sums exposed, $800 billion in market cap lost, but Beijing gains 15% equity in Nvidia alone if panic sells. Reyes stood, signaling the end. Agents moved in, uncuffing her for transfer. But as they did, Vasquez whispered to Sullivan, eyes urgent. It's not over. Wang's got a mole in your NSC. Higher than me. Check the tariff drafts. Sullivan's blood ran cold, the words landing like ice. Outside the room, in the bustling corridor, aides rushed with fresh briefs. Elite donors pressuring Congress for emergency hearings. 12 senators drafting a bipartisan bill to seize Chinese assets. 50 billion frozen if proven. Yellen caught Sullivan's arm as they exited, the door sealing with a final click. Society's fracturing. Polls show 62% of Americans back full decoupling. Boycotts on Chinese goods up 25% in stores. But the elite? Wall Street's hedging, $200 billion shifted to safe havens. Sullivan nodded, striding toward the elevators, the fluorescent strips blurring overhead. Trump's war room awaited, screens alive with fallout. Taiwan's stock exchange down 7%, EU commissioners convening on sanctions. New players emerged, Japan's Kishida pledging $6 billion in wafer tech, but demanding US lead the charge. In the Oval Office, Trump awaited, pacing before the windows where DC's spires pierced a cloudy sky. Sullivan burst in, breathless. Vasquez cracked. Wang's the linchpin, rare earth bans, Qualcomm probe, port fees, victims piling, 300,000 US jobs at risk, $1 trillion global hit if it spreads. Trump stopped, fists balled. The air conditioner droned on, chilling the space. And the mole? Inside NSC, Sullivan confirmed, dropping the dossier. Pages spilled, timestamps matching internal logs, access to G20 strategies. They're feeding Xi our every pivot. Yellen joined them, her folder thicker now. Reactions everywhere. Congress calls for audits. Subpoenas on commerce. $10 billion in subsidies scrutinized. International actors stirring. UN trade body warning of 0.5% world GDP shave. The president exhaled, sinking into his chair, the leather creaking. Aides filtered in, carrying projections. Pie charts of losses. US 40% of advanced chip market vulnerable. China holding 60% of processing power. Expose it all. Press conference at 3 p.m. No holding back. As preparations ramped, a secure line rang. Xi's office, indirect through Swiss channels. The voice on the other end was cool. Mr. President, the documents you seek? They're already public in Beijing. Your mole ensured that. Trump's grip tightened on the receiver, the plastic groaning. The room hushed, every eye on him. Markets outside trembled anew, Dow slipping 500 points on leak rumors. Sullivan's tablet flashed, breaking from Xinhua, U.S. trade sabotage exposed. Insider files reveal $450 billion subsidy fraud. The revelation cascaded, elites scrambling, society igniting with demands for heads. But the real shock waited in the fine print. Wang's memo leaked wide, naming not just Vasquez, but a path straight to the White House inner circle. The shadow war had names now, and the first betrayal was only the beginning. The press room in the West Wing thrummed with the low murmur of reporters, cameras flashing like distant lightning under the vaulted ceiling. President Donald Trump stood at the podium, his tie straight, hands gripping the edges as if anchoring against a storm. Behind him, Jake Sullivan and Janet Yellen flanked a large screen displaying charts in bold reds and blues, the stark lines of market dives and chip shortages laid bare for the world. The air hung heavy with the scent of fresh newsprint and the faint buzz of live feeds transmitting to millions. Ladies and gentlemen, Trump began, his voice steady, cutting through the hush. What started as a whisper in Beijing has become a roar. Xi's shadow war on our microchips isn't trade, it's sabotage. We've uncovered documents proving it. 1.2 million units rerouted, $450 billion in market losses, and a traitor in our ranks feeding them every move. The room erupted, questions firing like bullets. A reporter from CNN thrust a microphone forward. Mr. President, specifics on the leak? Is Elena Vasquez the only one? Trump paused, the spotlight hot on his face, casting sharp shadows across the blue carpet. Sullivan stepped to the mic, tablet in hand. Vasquez is the start. Intercepted memos from Wang Wentao detail the scheme. Antitrust probes on Qualcomm, blocking their $3.5 billion deal for Israeli chip tech. That's dual use, drones, EVs, our entire defense grid. China's widened rare earth controls to 5 more elements, effective November 8th. Without them, 85% of our semiconductor refining halts. Yellen followed, her voice measured, pointing to the screen where pie charts spun. U.S. dependency at 92% for high-end chips. Losses projected at $1.2 trillion if unchecked. Society feels it now. Unemployment claims up 15% in tech corridors, 150,000 jobs in California alone. Protests swell, 10,000 in Seattle today, demanding decoupling the Tiao, the Alwangs, scramble too. NVIDIA's board emergency meeting, stock down 18% on embargo fears. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, notebooks flipping, phones buzzing with incoming alerts. Outside, D.C. traffic hummed faintly through sealed doors, a world on edge. Trump reclaimed the podium, his gaze sweeping the faces. Xi thinks he can choke us, but we're fighting back. Executive order, $50 billion in CHIPS Act surge. Mandating 100% domestic sourcing for military tech. Tariffs on Chinese EVs, 60%, hitting their 1.8 million exports last year. A Fox anchor rose, voice sharp. And the NSC mole, Wang's path to the White House? Sullivan's jaw tightened, the room's air conditioner whirring softly in the pause. We're auditing every log, but the facts scream $500 million slush fund from Beijing routed to U.S. proxies. Wang's play, buy our dip, sees 15% equity in firms like Intel while we bleed. The briefing stretched, revelations piling like storm clouds. Yellen detailed the human toll. 50,000 auto workers furloughed at Ford plants, 120 F-35s grounded, $12 billion in overruns. Europe reacts. EU commissioners probe $150 billion in Chinese SMIC subsidies. If they sanction, global trade volume drops 10%. Trump nodded, interjecting, "It's not just numbers, it's our edge. Xi's port fees on U.S. vessels, 15%, $400 million hit to Boeing deliveries. We counter? Ban Chinese airlines over Russian routes, level the skies." As the session wound down, a side door opened with a soft click. Gina Raimondo slipped in, her face pale, clutching a secure fax. She whispered to Sullivan, the paper crinkling in her grip. The screen behind flickered to a new feed. Xinhua's broadcast. Wang Wentao at a podium in Beijing, documents in hand. Across the Pacific, in the vast hall of the Great Hall of the People, Wang stood tall, flanked by aides under crystal chandeliers that cast golden light on marble floors. The air smelled of polished wood and incense, a stark contrast to DC's frenzy. Reporters from state media leaned in, cameras rolling as he unveiled a dossier, pages stamped with U.S. seals pilfered from the NSC mole. "Comrades," Wang declared, his tone ironclad, "the American accusations are fabrications, but their secrets exposed. Here, internal memos on tariff drafts, 50% on our electric vehicles, projections $20 billion in lost contracts for them, our BYD surging to 2 million units. The hall murmured, flashes popping. A chart projected behind him. U.S. rare earth stockpiles at 3 months, China's 60% lock on refining. They cry sabotage, we reveal truth. Their $8.2 billion subsidies to Intel hidden through shells. Victims, their own 300,000 jobs at risk. GDP dip of 0.8%. Ours grows 4.8%, resilient. Xi observed from the wings, his expression unreadable, the room's silk banners stirring faintly in the AC flow. Wang continued, voice rising. Port fees, fair response to their vessel tariffs. We control 40% of global shipping lanes. Delays cost them $500 million daily. And chips, TSMC diversions secured our fabs. SMIC output up 19.5% despite bans. Questions flew in Mandarin, rapid and probing. An aide handed Wang a tablet, its screen glowing with live U.S. market data. Dow slipping another 300 points post-briefing. Society stirs in America. Protests, but also doubt. Their elite hedges $200 billion to safe havens. We buy $100 billion in their equities, strengthening ties. Back in D.C., the press room gasped as the feed played on the screen. Trump's fist clenched on the podium, knuckles white. That's the counterpunch. Wang's twisting our own files. Sullivan's phone vibrated. Urgent from the CIA. Mr. President, the mole's deeper. Logs show access from a deputy in your economic council. Name, Harlan Brooks. He's convening a backroom meet now, with lobbyists tied to Wang. Yellen's eyes widened, the room's energy shifting to chaos as reporters surged forward. Brooks, he drafted the G20 strategy. Full exposure if he flips. Trump cut the briefing short, striding off stage, the door slamming behind the trio. In the hallway, aides scattered like leaves carrying printouts of Wang's speech. New bans on genetic sequencers from Illumina, 25 U.S. firms sanctioned, $21 billion in ag exports targeted. The Oval Office sealed shut. Heavy drapes drawn against the afternoon sun. Trump paced the carpet, its pattern blurring under his steps. The clock ticked relentlessly, each second amplifying the fallout. Brooks, get him here, and the documents. Verify every line. Sullivan dialed, voice low. FBI en route, but Wang's revelation hits hard. Their antitrust on Qualcomm blocks 20% of iPhone assembly. Apple stock down 7% already. Yellen spread fresh pages on the desk, numbers stark. EU's probe could freeze $50 billion in Chinese assets, but retaliation. Soybean bans renewed, $12 billion U.S. loss. Secondary players multiply. India's Modi offers $4 billion joint ventures, but demands we lead. Taiwan's parliament votes $10 billion for fabs. Lies line holds, but drones over their plants up 200%. A knock echoed, sharp, urgent. General Mark Milley entered, uniform crisp, a sealed drive in hand. The air grew thicker, laced with the faint leather scent of the resolute desk. Sir, Cyber confirms. Wang's feed includes our rare earth countermeasures. They know about Australia's 40,000-ton ramp-up, pivot incoming, graphite bands, 90% of battery anodes cut. Trump stopped pacing, sinking into his chair with a creak. The balance shifts. Our press exposed Vasquez. Theirs buries us in our own dirt. Society boils. Polls at 65% for war powers on trade. Raimondo joined via secure video from Commerce, her office's fluorescent hum filtering through. New interests, Boeing lobbies for exemptions, $400 million at stake. But victims mount, 50,000 more furloughs announced in Detroit. The drive whirred as Milley plugged it in, screens lighting with intercepted Politburo chatter. Xi's directive for $300 billion state fund to snap U.S. tech. It's calibrated, Milley said. They lose 0.3% GDP. We bleed 1.2. But the elite fractures. Wall Street donors pull $150 million in PAC support. Trump's pen tapped the desk, a steady rhythm breaking the tension. A pause hung, broken by Sullivan's alert. Breaking! Congress subpoenas Brooks. Emergency hearing tomorrow. Yellen gathered the pages, her hand steady. Reactions global. UN warns 0.5% world shave. But Xi's winning optics? State media spins it as U.S. hypocrisy. The group huddled closer, voices overlapping in strategy. Outside, protesters chanted faintly, their signs waving against the White House fence. New facts emerged. Wang's slush touched 12 senators, $10 million in dark money traced. As evening fell, the door burst open again. FBI agents escorted Harlan Brooks in, his face ashen, suit rumpled. He clutched a briefcase, eyes darting. Mr. President, I can explain. The documents Wang has, they're partial, but if they release the full set. Trump rose, towering. The room stilled, the weight of betrayal pressing like fog. Explain fast, or the revelation turns on you. Brooks swallowed, the briefcase snapping open to reveal drives and printouts. Wang paid for access, $2 million wire to my offshore. But the real scheme, not just chips, they're targeting our AI hubs, cyber ops on 78% of cloud servers, blackout scripted for G20 Eve. The confession cascaded, numbers spilling. 15 million households at risk, $100 billion being cited. $30 billion daily bleed being served. Yellen paled. That's the lurking threat. Society collapses. Unemployment to 2% spike. Sullivan's tablet pinged. Wang's next move leaked. Full embargo on antimony. Gallium licenses revoked. Markets plunged 800 points in after hours. Trump's voice cut through, low and final. Lock him down and prepare the strike. Sanctions on Wang personally. Freeze his $500 million? But as agents moved, Brooks whispered to Sullivan, eyes wild. It's too late. Xi's envoy just landed in D.C., unofficial. He's here for a deal, or to bury us. The Oval's lamps flickered, casting long shadows. The revelation had cracked open the war, but the counterattack from Beijing sealed a deeper wound, one that reached into the heart of power, threatening to topple alliances from within. The dim glow of secure lamps illuminated the NSC conference room deep in the White House basement, where shadows danced across maps and glowing screens. President Donald Trump sat at the head of the steel table, his face etched with fatigue, fingers steepled as Jake Sullivan briefed the tight circle. Janet Yellen, Gina Raimondo, and a stone-faced Harlan Brooks, now under armed watch. The air was thick with the hum of encrypted servers and the sharp scent of whiteboard markers, remnants of frantic strategy sessions. Outside, DC rain pattered against reinforced vents, a relentless drumbeat mirroring the rising storm. "Brooks," Trump said, voice low and edged. He slid the briefcase across the table, its contents, drives etched with betrayal, spilling slightly. "You fed Wang our G20 playbook. 2 million wired to your Cayman's account. Explain why that doesn't end you right here." Brooks swallowed, cuffs glinting under the light, his chair creaking as he shifted. The room's silence pressed in, broken only by the soft tick of a digital clock. "It was leverage, sir, not treason. Wang promised intel on Xi's cyber timeline, probes into 78% of our cloud servers, set for blackout during the summit. In return, I leaked partial drafts, but the full scheme? They're hitting AI hubs first, NVIDIA's data centers, 40% of US processing power offline if it lands." Sullivan leaned forward, tablet in hand, pulling up logs that painted a digital trail. Timestamps matching Brooks's access to tariff models, 50% hikes on Chinese EVs projected to cost Beijing $20 billion. Partial? Your leaks arm their antitrust on Qualcomm, $3.5 billion deal dead, Israeli chips for our drones rerouted. Markets know it now. NASDAQ down 5%. $300 billion wiped since Wang's reveal. Yellen interjected, her voice steady but tight, spreading fresh projections across the table. Pie charts glowed. U.S. GDP shave of 1.2% by quarter's end versus China's 0.3%. Informational counterattack underway. Beijing's state media spins your confession as U.S. witch hunt. Polls in Shanghai show 78% backing Xi's squeeze. Here, society's fracturing. 20,000 protesters at the Capitol. Unions demanding emergency funds for 180,000 tech layoffs. Raimondo nodded, her pen tapping a staccato rhythm against a folder of sanctions drafts. The vent above hissed cool air, stirring papers faintly. Legal moves. 2. Justice Department's filing RICO on Wang's proxies. $500 million slush fund frozen, tied to 12 U.S. lobbyists. But Xi counters export bans on antimony and gallium, revoking 90% of our refining licenses. That's $15 billion in semiconductor hits. Fabs idling in Arizona. Trump's eyes narrowed, locking on Brooks. A pause hung heavy, the rain's patter amplifying the tension. You say leverage, I say sabotage. What's the cyberplay? Details. Now. Brooks exhaled sharply, the sound ragged in the confined space. He glanced at the guards, then leaned in. Wang's op, Dragonfly. Malware seeded via chip supply chains. Targets Northeast grid first. 15 million households dark for 72 hours. Coordinated with port blockade. 40% of Pacific imports stalled. $500 million daily bleed. But there's pressure building. Xi's envoy in town, unofficial. He's offering backroom talks. Lift Huawei bans. We ease rare earth caps at 70%. The door clicked open, admitting General Mark Milley, rain dripping from his coat, a soaked briefing satchel in hand. He shook it off, the drops scattering like accusations. Mr. President, institutional pushback. Congress just rammed through the Trade Security Act. Bipartisan, 312-120. Mandates audits on all China-linked firms, $50 billion seized if ties to Wang proven. But intel's hot. PLA Navy drills off Taiwan, escalated, 25 vessels simulating full blockade. Oil spikes 18% already. Sullivan's phone buzzed, a secure ping from the State Department. He scanned it. Paling. Higher authority stepping in. UN Security Council emergency session called by France. Warning of 0.5% global GDP drop if tariffs hit 60%. Europe's elite bulk, Germany's Scholz, threatens reciprocal duties on U.S. autos, $10 billion counter. Trump rose, pacing the room's edge, his footsteps muffled on the industrial carpet. The screens flickered with live feeds, G20 prep in Seoul, delegates scrambling as Xi's jet touched down early. Backroom it is. Get the envoy here. Neutral site, Blair House. No leaks. Yellen pushed back, chair scraping. Risky. If Brooks is right, cyber hits during talks. Blackout cripples negotiations. Unemployment projections, 2% spike nationwide, 250,000 jobs gone in EVs alone. Raimondo countered, voice urgent. Pressure them instead. Invoke Defense Production Act, mandate Boeing reroute components from China, 400 million saved but 15% production dip. Hit their airlines, ban overflights, level the $2.5 trillion trade field. The debate ignited, voices overlapping in the lamplit hush. Milley laid out timelines. 48 hours to G20 opener, Xi's delegation with demands. Soybean buys up 30% or full rare earth embargo. Brooks interjected, sweat. Beating. Wang's not bluffing. Their state funds $300 billion strong, poised to buy our distressed assets. 20% stake in Intel if markets crack another 10%. A knock shattered the rhythm. FBI Director Christopher Wray, face grim, clutching a tablet. The door sealed behind him with a pneumatic sigh. Sir, we traced the Dragonfly seed. It's in our ports. Long Beach servers compromised via Vasquez's old manifests. If activated, 60% of inbound cargo halts. iPhones, autos, $1 trillion annual risk. Trump stopped pacing, fists clenched. The room stilled, the rain outside intensifying to a roar. Threats end now. Tell the envoy. Personal sanctions on Xi's inner circle or we expose the full slush, $500 million names and all. Sullivan nodded, dialing the secure line to Blair House. The connection hummed, then clicked through. Xi's envoy, Vice Premier He Lifeng, responded coolly from the shadowed residence across the street. Mr. Sullivan, the president sends terms. No bans on our sequencers or cyber op launches at dawn. 78% of your clouds, gone. The line held, tension coiling like wire. Yellen whispered projections. Blackout costs $100 billion daily, society unraveling with riots and tech hubs. Raimondo sketched alliances. Japan's Kishida pledges $6 billion in wafers, but only if US leads the charge. Backroom negotiations flickered to life via split screen, he in a wood-paneled parlor, aides murmuring, Sullivan in the basement, maps aglow. Demands flew, U.S. subsidies to TSMC cut 20%, China's port fees dropped to 10%. Brooks watched, cuffed, his whispers feeding counters. Tell them we know the AI hit. NVIDIA's H20 chips, licenses revoked April, now weaponized. Trump observed from the shadows, a glass of water untouched, condensation beating cold. Milley's tablet pinged. International actors mobilizing. India's Modi offers $4 billion ventures. EU probes $150 billion SMIC aid. Stakes soared. No longer trade, but systemic survival. Decoupling or collapse. As hours blurred into night, the envoy's tone hardened. If no deal, G20 becomes grave. Your moles files? Public by morning. $8.2 billion Intel fraud exposed. Sullivan pushed back. Then Wang falls first. Rico indicts incoming. Freeze his assets. $20 billion and the The call glitched. Static, then clear. His eyes narrowed on the feed. Threats? We have higher leverage. PLA assets repositioned. Taiwan Strait, 200 drones over fabs. Your F-35s, grounded 120 units. 12 billion overrun. Yellen's calculations raced. Global recession odds at 65%. U.S. isolation if allies balk. Protests swelled outside. 30,000 now, chants echoing through vents. Trump stepped into frame, voice booming. Enough games. You say cyber, we say full spectrum, tariffs to 100% on your EVs, Boeing bans reciprocal, 1.8 million units exported last year, 0 tomorrow. The envoy paused, the parlor's clock chiming midnight. A beat of silence, then. "The president awaits your counter, but know this. Dragonfly's armed. One word from Zhongnanhai and your grid falls." The screen went dark, the room exhaling collectively. Sullivan's hands shook slightly as he closed the laptop. Stakes just went nuclear. No positions left, just the system's edge. Raimondo gathered papers, the rustle loud in the aftermath. "Congress backs us. Emergency powers granted, $50 billion more for domestic chips. But victims mount. 50,000 Boeing furloughs. If they retaliate." Milley stood, saluting. "Joint Chiefs on alert. Cyber shields up, but if blackout hits, Northeast chaos, 15 million dark." Trump sank back, the chair groaning under him. Rain lashed the unseen windows above. Brooks met his gaze, voice low. "Sir, the pressure's mutual. Xi's losing face. Internal Politburo splits over the 0.3% GDP hit." A final alert buzzed. Yellen's phone. UN resolution draft, sanctions on both. Trade volume down 10% projected. Society teetered, elites hedged $250 billion to havens. As the team dispersed to fortify, Sullivan lingered. The envoy's next move, backroom or bust. But if Dragonfly drops... Trump's fist hit the table, the thud reverberating. The balance shattered, institutional walls closing, threats coiling tighter. Higher powers circled, but the real escalation brewed in the code. A digital dagger poised over America's heart, ready to strike before dawn's light. The grand ballroom of the Busan International Convention Center pulsed with the murmur of delegates, crystal chandeliers casting fractured light across polished marble floors. President Donald Trump strode in, flanked by Jake Sullivan and Janet Yellen, the air thick with the scent of orchids and distant ocean salt from the nearby harbor. Outside, G20 banners fluttered in the Korean autumn wind, but inside, the weight of unfinished wars hung heavier than the humid air. Xi Jinping waited at the head table, his delegation arrayed like sentinels, faces impassive under the soft glow of LED screens displaying trade charts in Mandarin and English. Trump took his seat, the leather chair creaking faintly as he leaned forward. The room's ventilation hummed low, circulating cool drafts that did little to ease the tension coiling in every glance. "Mr. President," Trump said, voice carrying the gravel of sleepless nights, "your dragonfly's armed. Our grids teeter, but this ends tonight. No more shadows, no more moles. Deal or collapse." Xi nodded once, his fingers interlacing on the table, a subtle gold watch glinting. Sullivan slid a tablet across, its screen alive with final projections. U.S. losses at $1.5 trillion if cyber struck. China's GDP resilient at a 4.8% clip despite the squeeze. "The facts demand it," Sullivan added. "Rare earth bans revoked. General licenses for gallium, germanium, antimony, graphite. Full export flow to U.S. end users. 85% of our needs met, without cutoff." Yellen followed, her voice steady, pointing to pie graphs on the shared display. Global trade volume stabilized at a 10% dip, but mutual concessions could rebound at 5% by mid-2026. Tariffs drop, U.S. fentanyl levy from 20% to 10%, effective November 10th. Reciprocal rates suspended at 10% until 2026. No more hikes on your EVs. We lift the 60% wall, saving your 1.8 million units last year's export. Xi's eyes narrowed slightly, the room's silence broken only by the soft rustle of interpreters' whispers. An aide handed him a slim folder, pages crisp with bilateral drafts. "You say end. We say balance," Xi replied, his tone measured. "China suspends non-tariff countermeasures. End-user lists cleared. No more probes on Qualcomm or your Illumina sequencers. Investigations terminated. Antitrust, anti-monopoly, anti-dumping on 25 U.S. firms. In return, pause your Section 301 expansions on our maritime sectors. Building sanctions delayed 1 year." The negotiation unfolded in clipped exchanges, the ballroom's high ceilings amplifying each pause. Trump tapped a pen against the table, a rhythmic click underscoring the stakes. "And, the ports? No fees, no blockades. Long Beach flows free, 40% of our Pacific imports, $2.5 trillion annually, unhindered. Xi inclined his head, the gesture precise. Agreed. Reciprocal port pauses. No fees on U.S. vessels. Boeing deliveries resume without the 15% hit. $400 million preserved. Soybean purchases ramp 30% above last year. $12 billion to our farmers. TikTok framework. U.S. oversight. No ban. Sullivan interjected. Tablet pinging with real-time market feeds. Dow ticking up 400 points on leak whispers. Yuan steady at a 2% gain. Cyber ops cease. Dragonfly dismantled. Our grid secure. 15 million households safe from blackout. No hits on 78% of clouds. No AI sabotage on NVIDIA's H20 chips. Yellen spread addendums, numbers stark. CHIPS Act surges to $100 billion total. Domestic fabs ramping 50,000 jobs, but joint ventures with Taiwan and Japan, $10 billion from Lai, $6 billion from Kishida, tied to the truce. Tariff exclusions extended to December 31, 2026. Market-based process for U.S. imports. No more 125% spikes. The room's energy shifted as aides circulated drafts, pens scratching in the hush. Xi's voice cut through. One-year review, annual resets on rare earths, magnets settled for now, but structural, no forced tech transfers, IP protections enforced bilaterally. Trump leaned back, the chair groaning. A waiter passed with water glasses, the clink of ice faint but insistent. Done. Sign it. The war's over. Not won, but contained. Signatures flowed, Trump's bold scrawl, Xi's deliberate stroke, under the watchful eyes of cameras and envoys. The screens updated, tariffs halved, bans lifted, a fragile peace etched in ink. Outside, reporters surged, flashes popping like fireworks. Back in D.C., the Oval Office filled with weary triumph. Dawn light slanting through the sauti and si on gaur dista designer and enter be Basing Trump addressed the nation via secure feed, Sullivan and Yellen at his side. The air smelled of fresh coffee and relief, but the undercurrent of change lingered. We struck the deal, Trump announced, voice booming to screens worldwide. Tariffs down, rare earths flow. 10% rates hold through 2026. No more fentanyl hikes, no cyber daggers. Markets rebound. $800 billion restored already. Dow up 1,200 points. Yellen tosses nodded. Charts projecting the new math. U.S. GDP shave cut to 0.5%. Unemployment steady at 1.8%. No 250,000 job spikes. Reforms lock in. Defense Production Act mandates domestic chips for military. F-35s back online. 120 units delivered. $12 billion overruns halved. Boeing resumes full throttle. 50,000 jobs saved, Sullivan added, phone buzzing with ally confirmations. Global reaction, EU drops probes on $150 billion SMIC aid. Joins, joined the truce. World trade up 3% projected. India's Modi commits $4 billion ventures. Taiwan's fabs expand $10 billion under U.S. shield. But personal tolls emerged in the quiet aftermath. Harlan Brooks, cuffed in a side room, faced indictment. 25 years for the $2 million betrayal. His career shattered. Elena Vasquez followed, her immunity dreams dust. 15 years in federal hold. Wang Wentao, Xi's architect, sidelined in Beijing. Politburo. Whispers of demotion, his $500 million slush frozen. Assets seized in a U.S.-led sweep. Trump paced the carpet, footsteps measured. Xi grows stronger, his grip on rare earths at 60% refining, EVs dominating with BYD's surge. But we? Independence rises. Chips fabs in Arizona, 100,000 new roles by 2027. Yellen gathered folders, the Russell final. The system shifts. Congress passes the Trade Security Act permanent. Audits on foreign ties. $50 billion seized from proxies. No more moles. RICO nets. 12 lobbyists. Dark money trails cut. Outside, society exhaled. Protests dissolved. 30,000 voices turning to cheers as markets soared. Wall Street elites pivoted. $250 billion reinvested in domestic tech. But the country's sense stirred deeper. Vulnerability exposed, resilience forged. No longer invincible, America stared down equals. China's equal in the mirror, power structures redrawn in ink and concession. Xi, back in Zhongnanhai's shadowed halls, reviewed the accord under lantern light, aides bowing out. The air carried Jasmine T's steam, but his expression held steel. "We yielded ground," he said to a trusted deputy, "but the long game endures. Our fabs, at 19.5% output. State funds at $300 billion. They break. We build." In D.C., Trump stood at the window, city lights twinkling below. The microchip war had scarred, $1.2 trillion in scars, but healed an uneasy truce. Power's architecture bent, not broke. A multipolar world where giants clashed in boardrooms, not battlefields. The nation gazed inward, questioning its throne, emerging tempered, watchful. Yet as the feed cut, a final alert pinged Sullivan's device. Whispers from Beijing, dragonfly dormant, not deleted. The peace held, but the shadows lingered, a reminder that in power's game, finales were merely intermissions.